Char plugs it in, goes to flip the switch, and then all of a sudden you hear this boom. Literally, the power went out along the entire line.
Hey everyone, we wanted to talk really quickly because we had a lot of questions about the RV trip.
Why not talk about what happened?
There's a lot of things that we didn't necessarily tell you guys that happened behind the scenes. Okay, first off, this isn't us complaining. This is us just telling you a pretty interesting story of our misadventure. We could honestly write a screenplay for how crazy. Start from the beginning. We got everything packed up on the 15th. So we got everything going, so we were all pumped, we're ready to go. Anything happened at the beginning?
I feel like nothing actually happened.
I think we were like ready. A little like powwow at the beginning. We're like, all right, let's keep us safe. Let's just make this a good trip.
Yes.
I feel that was the curse at the beginning.
We were literally like creating this whole like bubble for ourselves. Well, it did curse us. Whatever we said.
The first thing, we parked in a rest stop or something like that, and we noticed that the door wasn't sticking. That was the first one.
The door wasn't shutting right, so it was like from the movement of the RV. We were literally having to like slam the door shut.
And if you didn't do that, it would pop open. That was the first thing. And we were like, okay, whatever, it's no big deal.
He had to get out, and he was like having to fix where like the door handle, I don't know what you want to call it, but like the tongue, I guess, like when you shut a door, like the little thing that goes into
little knobber guy.
Yeah, that goes into the wall or part of the lock. He had to literally like not only fix that on the door, but fix what was on the wall too.
It's like a puzzle. Generator was fine then, right? I feel like everything was good. We were just like, all right, everything's copacetic.
Yeah.
We have
I think
the
our
door.
first issue was Texas, right? It was after the storm.
It was right after that crazy gnarly storm where everything kind of because the storm ripped open the hatch and water went everywhere. So that was the next one. Driving through Texas and the generator went out like we were saying. We went to Walmart. I bought a bunch of fans. Then I'm like trying to call all these mobile guys like all over the Texas area where we were at. Ended up calling this company or this mobile guy who was like an hour and a half away. He came out. We got this random little RV spot in the middle of Texas.
It was actually really great. It
was really
awesome.
nice, actually. And it turned out to be something very, very stupid and very minor for them.
They felt bad.
They felt bad, but it was they had to charge us a good amount of money because they had to drive so far. So that was the first big thing. And then the
hill, the major
not
one.
even before that. Before that, we were at the generator situation. That was the one that stopped it, or that we had the issue where we drove at the Walmart. And then we wanted to put air in the tire, and we couldn't find air that would be big enough, strong enough to do for our tires because they're very strong. And so I had to get this tire gauge, and I got this tiny little tire gauge that meant for a car, like this itty bitty. It looked like the size of a pen, and just like shot it out. And we had to call around and find out how to do it at a gas station, like at Love's and stuff like that. So I had to use the big one with the 18-wheelers, and I had to have one of the 18-wheeler drivers show me exactly how to do it.
From there, like things were looking great. It was smooth. We're heading to the sand dunes, and we're so close. We're like 2 hours maybe. Never had to downshift in an RV before because
It's never been that big.
It's never been so big that it can't either handle the height or the decline. Like I've never had incline or decline. It's never had an issue. A couple minutes after downshifting and shifting back into drive, the dash would go out in the RV. It would the gas would go from full down to empty. Everything would shut off and then it would turn right back on. I was like, that's really weird. I told her about it. I'm like, that's really, really weird. 20 minutes later, same situation happened. Downshifted. 30 seconds after it, this time, the whole entire dash went off and turned back on. And then all of a sudden I smelt something and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I did something wrong. But we ended up pulling over and he smelt it. Smells gone. Talked to a few people. We're not really sure. We think it's okay. Let's get back on the road.
It was also day one of Charles versus the Generator.
Yeah.
That was the first time we were actually getting in mountains to where like the carburetor needed to be adjusted, but
we didn't
I didn't know that. That was something I never was told. Long story short, that was day one.
And I'm driving up this I guess it would be considered the first real steep area. I was driving up it and then all of a sudden the dash went out, brakes went out, everything turned off. I don't know if everybody knows this. Brakes on most vehicles are electrical, so if something electrical happens in your car and it just goes out, your brakes will go out. I don't know if that's true for every vehicle, which I don't think it is true for every vehicle. We're on the side of the interstate and slammed on the e-brake, and we were like, what the heck happened? And then the generator not working, not working at
No.
all. We couldn't
That
get
was
it to
day
work.
2 of
It
generator
was like
first Charles.
miserable. No, that was still
day
yeah.
1.
Well, not same day. I think the day thing, we've got it all mixed up. But
We're just gonna tell the story.
but
The days don't
generator-
matter anymore.
The generator wasn't working. Crappy parts, like we could not find anyone along with Good Sam. We could not find anyone who could come and look at this RV. Finally found this guy. It's like beyond what he did in regards to like repairing RVs. And so we were like, what are we gonna do? We finally found a place that was able to tow it because it was so big. You don't take a normal towing company. Like you have
Yeah,
to
basically a semi, essentially.
calling up, calling these people. Nobody could help us. We couldn't find anybody that could repair. It was just like a pain in the butt. We did find this guy who came out to look at it. Who
Yeah,
couldn't
one guy said
repair
he'd
it.
come out, but he never did.
But the guy that did come out and he was like, I'm sorry, this is like beyond what I normally do. He literally drove us into the closest town. And he had to make 2 trips because his vehicle wasn't big enough to take all of us, like us 3 and the dogs. So he made 2 trips, drove us in, let us put stuff in the back of his car.
Let us put the dogs in his car.
Yeah, I mean, he was so amazing. Like, so the kindness there, like, really kind of like eased the moment because it was a really tough moment. And then literally, I'm not even kidding you, for the next like couple days, Charles was like busting his butt calling
Everybody.
bazillion different RV places.
And so there was only one hotel that was actually available. So we managed to get in there. Then we found out, we're like, okay, well, there was nothing in the area where we were at. So I was like, let's go get some food, grocery store or something like that. We found out that this place was so small. They had 1 cab driver and 1 cab, and it was like an Uber, but it was like it was like if I were to start an Uber company. His name was Tommy. He pretty much had a monopoly of Trinidad, Colorado. So we couldn't do anything. We were kind of stuck there, and we ended up like convincing this tire company. I feel like still to this day it was somebody's personal car.
When we asked if there was like a rental car company,
they laughed at us. We got a car,
Yeah.
and then we were able to kind of figure out where we wanted to go.
So we ended up moving hotels, we got the car, and then coincidentally we're like at the state park, we're like sitting under a tree and we're just kind of like talking to each other. I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do anything else. We're just gonna have to rent a car and go home. Like that's just what we're gonna have to do. I was gonna have to fly home with Remy, and Charles was gonna have to rent a car back with the dogs. Like we were just trying to figure out what.
At this
what
point,
we need to do.
the trip was canceled.
Yeah. My sister was a couple hours away, so we're like, maybe we'll just go to her house until we figure everything out. I don't know how it happened. Char called somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, and they referred, and finally got hold of this really amazing company. And they were so nice. The lady was so nice on the phone. I remember being so nice. The place ended up being 15 minutes from my sister's house.
Now what we had to do is find a hotel in this area, and the section of where the RV was another one of those places that was very isolated, so we couldn't find rental places, or you can't find hotels in the area.
We ended up not staying with my sister because we had the 2 dogs, and she has a couple of dogs. It would have just been so much on her. So we ended up working it out to where we found this like relatively inexpensive hotel that was like very animal accommodating, and so that's where we ended up.
So we finally got to Colorado Springs, and we got somebody who's looking at the RV. We had it towed
Things
there.
were looking great.
And things are looking positive. We're still on the mode though that we're like, all right, the trip is canceled.
Yeah.
Like we were still just trying to get home.
Going.
Ended up staying for a couple days, and we found out like they couldn't get a part, so we had to stay another couple days.
So they moved us to a different room.
Just making ourselves at home at this cool little hotel.
So like swanky and
was-
like very California.
Yeah, it was very California. It was a Night's Inn that they renovated to be this cool little hotel. Like so they repurposed it.
Very environmentally friendly type of hotel. I'm coming out of the bathroom.
One of those barn door things that slides.
Coming out of the bathroom. Thankfully, Charles and Remy are nowhere near.
I think we're in the bed reading a book.
Yeah. I open up the barn door, and the freaking thing pops off of the track on the top because it didn't have a track on the bottom to keep it in. Smashed the computer, hit Diesel, and he was fine. And
he is fine.
we got
Still
him. He's
ding
checked
dong.
out. He's all good. What else could go wrong at this point?
Finally, I remember him calling like, "Hey, Charles, I got all the information. I know what's wrong. You might want to sit down." So I was like, "Oh, okay. This is gonna be fun." So he's like, "The alternator burned out I mean, it's an old alternator. We've talked about it before.
It's never been repaired. It's 17 years old.
So
it was something you couldn't predict.
Yeah, those things just got kind of go. Alternator went. As a result, the alternator fried all your batteries. I think batteries, like car batteries and stuff like that, are 12 volt. It was shooting like 18 or 20 volts into these things, so essentially just melted all the batteries.
Our entire
Everything.
livelihood on that RV was just fried.
Also, your power steering pump is going to fail eventually.
It would probably fail on our trip.
He's like, you don't have to do this. He's like, I'm not telling you you have to do this. We're not making you do it. Power steering pump. If you're driving a giant 1,000-pound like Class A, if that thing goes, I don't know. So we end up getting that replaced, which put our total even higher.
It cost us more than we were ever expecting. And the funny part is it's not even that the parts were expensive.
It's the labor.
It's the labor. Like I kept telling Charles, I'm like, dude,
we're in the wrong
why
business.
are we not RV mechanics? Like, what are we doing?
We went and got it, and then we were like, you know what? Should we continue the trip?
Yes.
Now we were like kind of pumped. We're like, oh, we got the alternator, we got the power steering pump. What else could go wrong? I think I literally said, what else can go wrong?
Group, we're gonna go to the sand dunes. We're gonna have a really good time. And as we're driving to the sand dunes, we notice that the generator is being funky again.
This is round 2.
And we're like,
Charles
what
says
is
the
going
generator.
on? We couldn't figure out the generator forever. So we had to pull over, try and figure out the generator, couldn't figure it out. Got it back on, things were good. Got to the sand dunes. Sand dunes was great. We had a fabulous time.
Oh, the awning hyperextended.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That was fun.
So yeah, the arm to the awning hyperextended, but basically broke. And we're like, are you kidding me? This is brand new. How did this happen? What is going on? Charles ended up getting it back into its rightful spot.
We'll go without it. Yeah,
it's
whatever.
a minor thing. We don't really need it. We love the night sky anyways.
Screw it, we're gonna go to Yellowstone and the Tetons. We wanted a halfway spot because it's so long between where we were at the sand dunes. Like, you know what, let's see if we can find something. And there's this thing called the Dinosaur National Park. Why not? While we're here, because we're here a couple days, we're part of a company that like kind of warranties our RV. We were gonna get the tires taken care of, so they had that all ready. They said they would be there the next day. The next day came. They couldn't get it because the tires were discontinued, so they had to get a different tire. Long story short, blah blah blah.
Stayed an extra day.
Yeah, so we stayed longer. They finally got the tires on, and we're like, all right, now we're ready to go.
This is not my fault.
This is both of our fault.
I got everything packed up on the inside. Charles's job is to do the exterior. My job is to do the
Interior.
So
what
however,
we end up
hold
doing?
on, shh. I will take blame as well. Charles gets into the rental car to take the trash down. Looked out the window, didn't see anything plugged in. Looked on the other side, didn't see anything. And I start driving and I hear like a snap or crunch, and I'm like, oh my God, please dear God, what did I do? I jump outside and the freaking cable was still plugged in, and I didn't see it because it was the way that it was like lined up against the tires and kind of under the RV, non-existent from being in the front seat.
Literally, the cable was as if you were to like
Just cut it with scissors.
It was a clean
It
cut.
was horrible because it got cut under the tires. Like, I'm just ruining this trip, blah blah blah. And Charles like, no, it's okay. And he ended up finding a place that was literally like 15 minutes down the road.
I explained this situation. I was like, I think we pulled the dumbest, probably common mistake. And he goes, it's not necessarily common. So I was like, okay, well, here's the situation. So ends up, we go to this place.
They fix it.
They fix it for free. Okay, not free. I'm so sorry. They did it for free. I bought the parts, and he was explaining everything. It had to do with electrical stuff. So I was like, I don't want to touch it. I will hire you to do this. Can you do this? He's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. All it was a $30 piece of plastic.
And before I leave, I said to Charles, I'm like, hey, should we plug this in to make sure that this worked? He's like, I don't know what we would plug it into.
Yeah, because they didn't have a 50
and
amp.
it makes sense. He's like, they didn't have anything. So I'm like, all right, it's fine, whatever. We get to the Tetons, which was kind of a trek from that point. We pull into our RV park. We're like, this is great. We're so excited. And Char goes to plug in the thing, and he's like, okay, turn stuff on. I'm like, nothing's turning on. Maybe it's just this one particular site. We just need to move to a different site. So we moved to another site. It would work a little bit when he would move it, but it wouldn't.
If I held
really
it,
work.
it worked.
Yeah. Moved to the next site. This is the last site that we moved to. Finally, Char plugs it in, goes to flip the switch, and then all of a sudden you hear this boom. Literally, the power went out along the entire line.
Everyone's stuff had circuit breakers
because
they had circuit breakers too. So everything, safety. Long story short, We had no cell reception, no Wi-Fi.
Nothing.
We had a courtesy phone. That's it. And then I was like trying to use this no Wi-Fi to find another mobile guy to come out. Got another person. Had to drive again another hour and a half. So we were like, okay, this is gonna be like the last one. Pulls the cap off. And he goes, your negative and your positive are touching. So he ended up like redoing the whole thing. By redoing, I mean just 2 cables. At the end of the day, another like little costly situation. We got it working. We spent the whole time at Yellowstone.
It was great. Got to Glacier. Glacier was great. We had a great time. There was like no problems. We're like, nothing, please don't let there be anything else that's wrong. We had this constant issue with the generator up until the Tetons, and we could not figure out what was going on. So Char asked the guy who actually fixed
the RV,
and he said, you know, like, what's like, I can't figure out, do you mind checking out this the generator?
He said everything was fine. He was running it. And so we're like, all right, that's good. Because the whole time we're like thinking, okay, now we have to buy a new generator.
And then if we were going to have to buy a new generator, we're just done. We
were tapping it out. We were like, all right, we're selling the RV. He told me that there's this little knob on the carburetor that you adjust on altitude. Nobody told me. I'm not a savvy.
I don't think really anybody really knew about it because it's not.
He did.
But I'm just saying, like, I think that, like, being from Florida, you don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. So it's like it's not something that you hear often. Like we didn't know about it ever whenever we've rented an RV before telling them that we were going across country. Nobody's ever mentioned this to us before.
The needle that told you where roughly you were was gone. So I had to like gauge it. I'd have to put it all the way up to 10,000 and it would go boom, boom, boom. From there I'd have to go all the way back and finesse it, and it was the most stressful thing. Dude. The entire trip was Charles versus Generator. That's what we should call it. Charles versus Generator trip 2021.
But Charles had figured it out. He did such a great job of figuring it out.
Glacier, what ended up happening was Charles versus Generator again. Because of the altitude vibrating and not knowing what I was doing, so it was revving too much. It ended up, there's 2 circuit breakers on the generator for the AC, because we were like, okay, now this AC is not working. And they're brand new. So we found out that there's these circuit breakers that's like a 30 and a 20, so they become a 50. That's not what the RV is. Apparently over time it vibrated the 2 screws that held the circuit breaker in. When it would vibrate, like, because
it would turn it off.
It would hit the switch and the AC would go off. So then I figured that out and I had to go.
It's just because it's an old RV.
Yeah,
like this is not. We don't have a lemon. We have a great RV.
Yeah.
This happens. These situations happen to so many people.
That was the funny thing. Flashback to the RV getting repaired. There was a brand new one, $800,000, right next to us. That was sitting there for 2 or 3 weeks.
Major issues.
Yeah. So I got the circuit breaker for the AC on the generator fixed. So then I'm like, okay, screw you, generator. I win this battle. And then we wanted to go to the Badlands because we were after Glacier. We were like, all right,
we're heading home.
We're done. And so we got there, and I feel like everything was fine.
It was great. We had a great time.
I don't think there was anything.
It was so beautiful.
Oh, we did have an issue.
Yeah.
But at the end, we're like, okay, now we're going home. We looked at the tire, and we're leaving, and the tire was low, so we're like, okay, now what do? We couldn't get somebody out into the freaking desert to pump our...
Well, there was no place that it could...
This was a population of 94. One town was like 30 minutes this way, another town was 20 minutes this way, and so we're like, all right, we can't drive on this thing, it's too hot. Found this little tiny place called Cowboy Corner. I asked them very nicely if they had air, so they let us use their air. Long story short, what ended up happening is, if you ever look on big tires, like double tires, check the tire of the one behind is like a hose, and then to check the one in the front is usually like a 90-degree like elbow. There's a lot of warning signs about rough roads, and
literally you were like going like this.
That. Yeah, the little 90-degree thing went like this and turned, and as it turned, it loosened. So therefore, it slowly was expelling air. Over the course of sitting for 2 or 3 days at the Badlands, it ended up knocking it down the PSI to like very minimal.
Terrifyingly low.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out the altitude. That was like the hardest thing for us because we didn't have the knob that's connected to it.
It was when did the flap fall off?
We don't know.
So the generator door is like, I found out.
I think he left it behind and he swears up and down left and right that it fell off.
Like,
but I'm driving the vehicle and I never once felt nothing.
We find out the generator door did its thing, gave up. I think it was like, you know what, screw this trip. And
you're allowed to have that one thing.
It went goodbye. We're home. It was a great trip. We had so much memorable trip. It was honestly, like I said at the beginning of this long video, was that It was a misadventure. Also, remember how I told you at the beginning I had no idea what I was doing? At the end, I texted Chewy. I was like, hey, dude, you want to open up our own RV repair shop? Because at the end, I knew everything about that
Oh my gosh,
RV.
Trevor's so good.
I knew everything about this thing.
And I learned a lot about the interior.
Yeah,
which
you
was
did a lot
cool.
about the drives, the overdrives, and
The
stuff like
drives
that.
and the slide outs and all that jazz. I learned a lot about that stuff. There was a lot of stressful moments, but I think that the adventure kind of outweighed it. But we are happy to be home.
We made it. I hope you guys enjoyed those videos. I'll put the
fine.
playlist of the entire misadventure down there.
What was your favorite place?
A lot of this we didn't actually say in the
People
videos.
ask. They're like, what happened? Really, what happened on the trip? Well, here's what really happened.
Yeah, I am so sorry. We could have done bullet points. If you're watching this right now, I want you guys to say the word pumpernickel in the comments, just to prove that you watched it or you just read the comments. We'll see you guys tomorrow.